To crowdsource ideas for policymakers and wrap up, please welcome back Kathleen Merrigan, Sabine O'Hara, Michael Hamm, and Deborah Atwood.
Home stretch, home stretch. Thank you all for being so attentive today. A lot of people have made it through the distance from 9 to 5, both in the room and on the live stream, so thank you very much. Anne has been a great leader at USDA. She mentioned the Urban Ag Toolkit. Eleanor Starmer did as well. You can find the link to that at the Pigeonhole site. That Pigeonhole site has resources for you. So what do I mean about crowdsourcing? So the GW Food Institute is going to say, email us your ideas for what should be in the Farm Bill around urban agriculture. And we're going to collect all of these ideas. And working with my colleagues here, Deb and Michael and Sabine, we're going to try to take the input that we've received today, a lot of great ideas. I know, Michael, you asked your panelists, you asked Karen and oh God, let me think of Malik and Lauren, write down their ideas. We're going to get everything that we talked about today. We're going to get down on paper, and we want to make sure that we put together a white paper for policymakers to consider. So please participate in that. Today is not the end of the conversation. We have wind in our sails. I'm so grateful to Senator Debbie Stabenow for introducing a very comprehensive and exciting piece of legislation. I know she and her staff want to get feedback from all of us before the new Congress begins and the bill will be reintroduced. So again, this is the beginning of a conversation, not the end. I want to just get a pithy observation, a closing thought from my co-hosts here as we say goodbye to all of you and we head out for a wonderful weekend. So let me start with you, Deb. What's on your mind?
Yeah, no, thank you so much. What's on my mind is how to capture the energy of the youth and of the people that we've heard from today and create a broader coalition to support the connection between rural and urban agriculture, and how do we parlay that into respectful and important policies in the next Farm Bill.
Michael.
Yeah, I'm not sure if mine's that pithy.
Mine was processing.
That was very pithy.
Yeah.
I don't know if any of you have ever heard of the Oxfam donut. Has anybody ever heard of it? No. Well, you might Google it if you haven't. Kate Rayworth at Oxfam came up with it, and it's this idea that takes the 9 planetary boundaries that the Stockholm Resilience Center and others came up with, and says that's the ceiling of where planet Earth can operate, where we as humans in planet Earth can operate. And the floor is human social conditions, so gender equity, racial equity, health access, education access, and all those kinds of things. And what's in between that is the safe operating space for Earth in terms of us, in terms of humans. And I think that one of the things that I've learned today and that I think was interesting for me to think about as I think about the Farm Bill and where we might go with it is that urban agriculture has a really incredibly important role to play in some cities, more so from more with respect to the volume of food that's potentially produced, like in a place like Detroit, but in all cities, important in terms of what it does for that floor, for racial equity and safe spaces for people to operate in education and health education and various kinds of things like that. And at the same time, we have to think about in the different forms that urban agriculture can take, how does it relate to those planetary boundaries and the ceiling that we have to operate around with our environment. So I think that I want to think about a lot more about kind of how that plays out and thinking about what are the different components of the Farm Bill. Because I think one of the things I think that's really critical that came up in, I think, the first session today that really struck me very hard, is the importance of ensuring that people that make up the population of a city, that the resources that are embedded in that Farm Bill for urban agriculture are really occurring mostly to that population, to that groups of people in those cities. And I think a strategy for ensuring that that happens, I think, is really critical in the Farm Bill. So.
Our ag economists. Sabine, what are your thoughts?
Well, somewhat similar to Michael's, I was struck by how much this idea of context came up. Not just urban ag itself, but urban ag is happening in a context. And I think, that urban environment, when we're really at that intersection between agriculture and the comprehensive food system and people, maybe that's one of the important contributions. It reminds us of the social and cultural context, as well as the environmental and physical context. And whenever we think of things not sort of as isolated in a bubble somewhere, but really in context, it pushes us to think differently. And one of the things that I've been struck with in today's conversations is how often this idea of the loop closing, sort of the circular, this is not a throughput thing. Where we start from here and we go there and somehow it disappears, right? But it kind of comes back around. So why don't we think about it in that kind of a cyclical way to begin with, rather than as an afterthought? And maybe it's time to kind of reframe and I'm really going to date myself, the Club of Rome issues. Maybe it's not sort of a Malthusian, right? Population grows faster than food, and so we're going to have a real resource constraint. Maybe what the real constraint are the sinks, not the sources, but the sinks, the absorptive capacities. And of course, human bodies are part of that. Our bodies are absorbing all kinds of stuff too, right? And so maybe what we need to think about in urban ag can be a really important catalyst in that way, is it's not just about sources, it's about sinks. It's about these absorptive capacities. And if we add things that are not particularly helpful to our own bodies, they act as sinks as well, and there are consequences. So. I think urban ag has a real contribution to make, maybe for ag in general, in reminding us of that cyclical nature. So now I've just given you a much, maybe hopefully more narrative concept for that shorthand of social and environmental externalities, right?
There you go. All right, so here's one of the things that I'm really reflecting on at the end of the day. This was a forum about urban agriculture, and everyone who crossed the stage has some role to play in urban agriculture. And yet what I heard repeatedly throughout the day was respect, admiration, and appreciation for farmers in rural America and what they do. And I heard that urban agriculture is more than just about food, and that people want a piece of the Farm Bill. They want what they're doing to be recognized in the urban sector, and for people to see that there's great opportunity and excitement about this. But it's not an either or, that there's opportunity to do complementary work that actually strengthens our food system and people's understanding about food, where it's produced, who produced it. I know I'm a broken record on that, but I think it's a really important challenge for our country now with the increasing urbanization and people's disconnect from production ag. So that's it. I just want to finally say thank you again to you. A special thanks to all our speakers, many of whom traveled a great distance to be here. You know, there were no honoraria, nothing, just other than our great thanks to them. I want to thank my small team of people who put this event together, particularly Ariel Kagan, who did a marvelous job. And finally, I want to thank my co-hosts. Everyone, have a good evening and a great weekend.